Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. I'm Abram Kielsmeyer-Jones, and I'm glad that you're here with me. Thanks for being here. You may even be watching this on a recording in the future because we are recording what is right now a live webinar. It is called Using the Research Feature to Launch Your Studies. And you ought to see my screen, which is showing a handout, and that handout is available to you if you're here live in the handout section of the GoToWebinar control panel. If you logged in successfully, you should be seeing that control panel already, so just make sure that you navigate down to the handout section, make sure that triangle is clicked and pointing downward so that it expands and gives you this handout. If you're watching later on, or if you have any issues accessing from within the control panel, you can email me, abramkj@accordancebible.com. It's right here, and I'd be happy to pass this handout on to you. So today we're going to spend about an hour talking about this one kind of catch-all feature in Accordance called research. And of course, research is what we do in Accordance, but there's an actual feature named research, capital R, which really is meant to give us quick access to everything in our library. So we'll spend the hour talking about that. We'll talk about what it is and how you might best utilize it to set up your search, how you might customize it, and then how you can use the results as a launching pad for your studies. If you have questions at any time, there is a questions box that you can use. It's like a one-way typed chat. So if you type in your question, I will see that and I'll respond either privately or more likely I'll just anonymously share your comment or question with the group and respond to it so that everyone can hear. So feel free at any time to ask questions, make comments. I'll check in on those from time to time. All right, so let me share with you two quick links at the very outset of this webinar. Here are the Accordance help files, and here are the Accordance forums. And I share these just to say that there is so much this app can do, and we will get pretty far, I think, with research. We won't cover everything there is to cover today. And so if you want to add to your personal knowledge base, I recommend the help files to you and also the forums, which are interactive with users worldwide. And so you can ask a question at any hour, depending on your time zone, and you'll probably get a reply pretty soon. In fact, I would be curious to know, just from my own personal curiosity, where you're coming from today. If you want to test out the questions box and just use it as a type chat, let me know where in the world you are coming from. I'd love to know, and then share that with folks, just the locations. That's always interesting to see. All right, so what is the research feature? Years ago, research was known as Search All. I should say versions ago, it wasn't that many years ago. It was known as Search All, and that research feature allows you to easily access any and all resources in your library from a word search or a verse search. And this isn't really on the handout, but there are really two kind of primary ways we're going to go about this today. One is, here's a research window. Let's get at it. Let's go after it. Let's do our search and see what we can get. So that's a sort of from scratch kind of searching. And we might come to Accordance with a question or a topic or a verse in mind and say, all right, I want to learn about baptism, or I want to see what my books that I have say about baptism. And so you might be coming to a kind of blank screen research search, and so we'll talk about that in detail. Another way you might be wanting to access research is in context, and we'll get to this today later as well, and that's from within a Bible text. So you may not be sitting down and thinking, all right, I'm going to study this topic. You may be reading through a passage in Accordance, whether that's for personal Bible study or writing a paper, teaching a class, writing a sermon, preparing a Bible study, following along with a Bible study. And you may come across a word or a concept that you want to research from the biblical text. And so that would look a little bit more like this. And maybe you want to look up the word light, and then you can right click and access research contextually. So those are the two kind of main approaches. How do you get at research and really access it by itself? And then how do you do it contextually? So what is the research feature? And let me just share, we've got folks from Rome, Georgia, Bremerton, Washington. I hope I pronounced that right. I hope that's a short E. If not, please correct me. Georgia, Louisville, Kentucky, Charlotte, North Carolina, Phoenix, Arizona, London, and Miami. All right, well, we're pretty well spread out today. And I'm Boston, by the way. So we've got the corners of the earth, at least some of the corners represented. Research, as I mentioned earlier, was known as search all. So you can think of it still as search all because that's what it does. It searches everything you have. And we're going to start by looking at the blank slate kind of approach, this research window and how we might use it to run a search. So we're going to access it. There's a few ways you can access it, but most simply, if you go to the File drop-down menu in Accordance and go to New tab, you'll find research. I'm in Accordance 13 on a Mac. I don't have Accordance 14 on this machine, but you may have Accordance 14. You may be on Windows. I think research got moved up more toward the top in Accordance 14, but you'll find it in that File New tab, and you can open up a new research. Now notice this says Research 2, Research 3. That's just because I already have different tabs open. But let me start over and do this from scratch. So File, New tab, Research. All right, so there's my window that I'm going to use. So the first thing to do is, what are we going to search? And let's do baptism. And so I've typed in baptism. So I've got what's called my search argument, if you want to use coding language, or search term or terms. It doesn't have to be one word, but once we know what we're searching, there are now a couple more decisions to make about this. I could just hit enter here, but some settings are already made for me here, and I want to just kind of walk through what those decisions are. So the first one, once I know what I want to search, and we're going to do baptism, the first question is, what do I want to search? And that's the search field. So I've answered the question of what search term, but the search field is kind of related to that. Am I searching an English word, a Greek word, a Hebrew word, a Syriac word? Am I searching a verse, an image, Unicode? We'll go through some, but not all of these today. But this is just a simple English search for the word baptism. So I've got that word. So that's the first decision. What do I want to search? Well, my search field, I'm just going to do English. Now, the second decision is, where do I want to search it? And by default, I've got this drop-down menu here that says all. So I can search all. That's everything. I mean, all means all. Everything in my library, it will search. This subdivides, though, into some smaller categories, and you'll see them on the handout here. This is actually just a screenshot with the label right out of the help files. So you can see what it is that you'll search. And so the kind of top section, again, we're going to search for baptism. We'll actually do it. But I can search everything, which, no reason not to just do that and then wade through the results. It may be, though, that you just want to search your texts. So that would be primary texts. That will be biblical texts. It would also be things like, apostolic fathers, or if you have Philo or Josephus, or any primary research text in your library that will show up. And then tools, that's secondary texts. So basically anything that comments on a text, more or less. So that would be dictionaries, commentaries, monographs, devotional works, Bible studies, things like that. There's graphics tools, which is just sort of what it says. And then custom, we can talk about that as we go on. But that's the kind of broadest grouping, set of groupings that you can search. This next kind of category or group of categories is going to be my user groups, if I've got any. And we will talk today about how to create a user group, because if you're already feeling overwhelmed by this, and you won't be the more you use it, but if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can also just say, I want to make my own user group so that I know that every time I go to research, it's going to search these particular tools and only these tools. So we'll talk about that. And then this third kind of major grouping of where you search it, the search group, kind of subdivides your options into what's in your library. So these would be tools, commentaries, lexicons, grammars, visuals, so on and so forth. So these are more specific, and it may be that you just want to look at baptism. Let's just do a search. I'll stop talking and run a search. You may just want to search it in your dictionaries. Now, if you were doing a robust study of baptism, I'm guessing you would want to look at some primary texts, which your dictionaries will show you. So you probably would want to search it in maybe all. But the research feature allows you to customize your searching. And it may be that you say, I want to start with what my dictionaries have to say about baptism. You can do that. Or you could subdivide it into, you could do something else like study Bibles or preaching resources or something like that. So those are the two kind of major decisions. Once you've got your search term or terms, you want to set it to what are you searching? In other words, what search field, and then where do you want to search it? Now, again, this is maybe overthinking it if you just want to always default to all. If I search baptism in all, that only took, I don't know, half a second longer. And it will still give me my dictionaries here, but it's going to put them as one of several collapsible categories. And it searched everything in my library and it grouped it. You'll notice this order: Greek, Hebrew, lexicons, grammars. Look at this: Greek lexicons, Hebrew lexicons, grammars. It followed this same basic order as what's in my library. I just have more to wade through now in the content sidebar, but maybe that doesn't bother you. You just have more to navigate through, and maybe that's what you want to do. Accordance doesn't really care how, I mean, not that Accordance is apathetic, but it's an inanimate object. The program doesn't care what you search. It wants you to have options. The programmers want you to have options. So you can search anything and everything, but you can also get more granular if you want to. Now, let me just add one other kind of 0.5 decision, and that is, are you going to do a flex search or an exact search? And that's going to have to do with, let me get back to this. That's going to have to do with how, I don't know if fuzzy is quite the right word, but the help files put it well, and I put this in the handout. Actually, this is not about the flex search or the exact search. This is basically, are you searching this exact combination of letters, or are you allowing a little bit more room for some fuzziness? So for example, let's change the example. If I do love and I hit enter, what it has searched for is love, but in a flexible way, because I have it set to flex, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But lovest, loved, and you'll see in any of these biblical texts that it's not just LOVE, but it's a flex search. Now that setting is over here. So you've got the search entry box here where you decide what to search. You've got the search field, which is kind of your first major decision. You've got the search groups, your second major decision, and that kind of, I think of it as a half decision. Flex searches versus exact searches. If I change to exact, you'll see I clicked it and it turned to equal. Now it will search love as LOVE, and it will give me exactly that word. This gets a little bit funny with different words, and this all has to do with language. Like baptism, I'm searching the exact word. So you'll see here what I get is baptism in the Bible, but that's just the word baptism. If I go to flex search, I still just get baptism, because the flex search does not necessarily differentiate between a noun and a verb. So you just have to kind of be creative around some of this stuff. Like baptize as a separate word in English will give me baptized or baptizing in the flex search, but I still, for baptism, I need to do that separately on its own. So you might spend some time, and if you've got questions about this, feel free to ask, but you might just spend some time experimenting a little bit with the kind of search that you want to build depending on what you're looking for. But do just note that flex and exact search. I tend to leave mine on flex search because if I'm searching the verb baptize, for example, I want all conjugations of that or all inflections of that, all uses of that. If I search the verb love, I want love, loves, loved. And you've got a tagged biblical text here, so it will be able to do that for you. So this is really enough to be able to run just about any search. And again, you can do multiple search terms. We can talk about that as we progress. But probably the first thing to think about is, are you doing something other than an English search? So yeah, maybe you're doing an English or a Greek search. And in that case, you could do agapao. Are you searching it in everything or just kind of a subset of what you have? And again, this all has to do with personal preference. Personally, I rarely use anything other than all here for the search groups because it will group my searches nicely. And even as I make my way through these, I can collapse them and kind of keep an organized list there. So that's kind of the research feature at its most basic. I suspect that raises questions, some of which we will get to in just a moment. But if you've got particular questions, I'd love to hear them. If you want to type them into the chat, like I said, I'll respond either privately or publicly if it seems germane to the whole group. We're going to do some more word searching in just a moment, but that's just kind of the real basic, like what's here and how do I use it? And again, this is not searching from a biblical text. We'll do that too. But this is how do I use this research search? So, pick your topic or word. Maybe it's create. And again, it's very quick with this search and how it runs it. And I've just, kept that at English, done all. That squiggly or equivalent sign there shows me it's a flex search. So if I've got a tagged text, like a Bible text here, it will give it to me in multiple inflections. As well as in the commentaries, actually, we'll do that too. So I've got created, create. It gives me flexible search results in the commentary. All right, I'll stop there. Let me see what questions folks have. Oh, and a couple other locations, Trinidad and Tobago, wonderful. Nigeria, awesome. Okay, here's a comment. I'll put this in the chat. Someone says, I tried doing the search for baptism in accordance, crashed 3 times. I'm running the latest version on a MacBook Air. I'm very sorry to hear that. And I don't know what would cause that. It could be any number of things. And I'm not going to be the tech guy that says, restart, even though tech support always says that. So I'm sorry to hear that. The best thing I can think of, because obviously that's far from ideal. That's not even passable app behavior. The best I can think of is the email support. They are very responsive even when they're backed up. And if you get to the point of they can even screen share with you if you're comfortable doing that. Otherwise, you can describe the issue further to them. So sorry about that. All right, let's see what other questions there are. Can one search in more than one language at a time? I don't think so. If somebody knows otherwise or a good workaround, I don't know. But and I'm even trying to think of a use case where you would want to do that. If you have an example of the kind of search you would want to do, I'd love to hear it, but I don't think that's possible. I mean, you can select multiple search groups to search in, and that is actually here in this image. It shows you that with a plus sign. So I take this word create, if I hold down shift and click on dictionaries, see it added a little plus and it retains it. Now if I hold down shift again and click on commentaries, I can go back and see it retain that. So now if I hit enter on create, it searched dictionaries and commentaries. So I know this is not your question, but it is just to say you can search multiple select groups at once, but I don't know how you would search multiple languages at once. But if you've got a particular example or use case in mind, feel free to share it and we'll see maybe there's a good workaround to get at the same information, but it wouldn't be through a single search in the research. Somebody says, can you use the OR command with English and Greek word combined via the OR? I don't know. I mean, we could try that. And I'll need. All right. Well, let's take this example. Let's try love or no. I don't know how this would work because you have to set this to 1. So I'm not even sure. Like if you wanted to look, so here's a use case. Maybe you want to find a paragraph where it says love or agapao, and you just want to cover all your bases. But it will only allow you to type in 1 language here. So I think the answer is no. Yeah. Let's see what other questions or comments folks have. Oh, here's a good, yeah, let me just note this here on the search groups, accordance, items in square brackets. So these ones in the search groups are accordance defined, while items without brackets are user defined. Yeah, that's helpful, thank you. Yeah, that's right. So any of these are ones that I made. So you probably will not have these in this kind of second, third in your search groups because these are user created groups. And like I said, we'll get at those in a bit, but anything with brackets are ones that Accordance created. All right, let's continue on. Here's a question somebody asks, any chance you'll cover infer search? And I will not cover infer search because I don't think it's really compatible with research, but it is an awesome and powerful search. And that reminds me that it's been quite some time since we've done a webinar on it. So I would be happy to plan that for the not so distant future. So thanks for asking about that. All right, let's continue on. And yeah, searching words and navigating the results. All right, so let's search some words and navigate the results. We haven't really navigated the results yet, and that's actually kind of a key component to the research feature. It is wanting to surface our information quickly and efficiently or effectively, but also allow us to interact with it. So let me just, I'm going to uncheck some. See if I can uncheck these. Okay, all right, so those are unchecked. So now we can, you know what, I'm just going to open up a new research tab altogether. All right, so what we're going to do now is talk a little bit more about navigating the results having run a search. And this is from the help files. I put this here. This has to do with that search field, and it just sort of gives you the definitions of what it is you're searching. And I mean, these are not, you know, the term itself kind of tells you what you're doing, but this gives you a little bit more detail on that. Probably the most important one of these is that when you're searching an image, you're not actually searching an image. Like I don't know if any of you, I know a lot of you probably have iPhones. I don't know that all of you do, but in iPhone, there's like a recent update, and I would assume the Google phones have this too, but there's a recent update where you can search dog in your photos and it knows that the picture of a dog is a dog, and you type in DOG and it will show you your dog. That does not exist in Accordance. So you're not searching images in that way. That's a pretty recent innovation even from Apple. So that's not what the image search is, but it will search the captions, which is, again, not the same thing, but it's still helpful. So for example, if you wanted to look at images like maps of Mesopotamia, any caption that had Mesopotamia would show you that map. It would not show you images where Mesopotamia is on the map, but if it's in the caption, it would surface that. And this can be a useful search for, you know, looking for good visual aids. in fact, let's just see, I'm curious, for, Bible studies or sermons or group discussions or something like that. So you can see here that this is searching by the caption specifically, but I'm getting just images. And in fact, here is a map that pertains to Mesopotamia, but it pulls it up because Mesopotamia is in the caption. All right, well, let's take, actually, let's stay with the image search. So I might just do something, let's do something a little bit more general, Jerusalem. All right, that was instantaneous, but I decided that I was going to search by image this time, which is again going to show me anything in the captions of images. And so now I've got all of these results because I searched all that I can navigate through. So let's talk about that piece where we're actually navigating the search results. Now, what I've got showing is a window where I've got the results here in the main part of the window, and then the kind of table of contents of the results, if you want to think about it that way, here in the sidebar. I can move this sidebar over so that it takes up more of the screen. I don't know why I would want to go that far, but maybe it's cutting off some of it, so I can put it like that. I can also hide this table of contents so that I'm just looking at the results. So now I'm just scrolling through my library, and I'm going to do this quickly because watch the top. It's showing me hits for Jerusalem as a caption in the Dictionary of Early Judaism. Once I get through that, it's going to go to my next one, Erdman's Dictionary. Personally, I can't imagine a scenario where I wouldn't want this open, so I'm going to keep that open. And while I can scroll through the results, I can also move ahead via the table of contents. And I can expand and collapse these all that I want. Maybe I just want to say, all right, you know what, I'm just going to hide all these other ones and focus in on visual for now. So let's go to Bible art or Bible Times Photo Museum. And so that's the contents sidebar, the table of contents that you can use to navigate. But suppose you want to actually look at this stuff a little bit more. So here is, for example, Jerusalem during the time of David. And I can click that open and I can certainly see the image, and that's great. I can even make it full screen. I can move the picture to a new zone that way. But I can also go to this open button right here, which when I hover over it, it says open text from paragraph. And so what that means is now I can open this in the resource itself and interact with it that way. In other words, what I'm seeing here is essentially a preview. It's kind of like the look inside this book feature with like an online ebook or something. This is a preview, and it tells me where it's coming from. And I get the image, the caption. I mean, it gives me everything I asked for. But if I want to look at this in more context, I can go to open and see it that way. And then I can scroll through it. And actually what I'm seeing now is all of my hits all in one place, but in the broader context of the book. So I've got everything in the book now, which then I can open that content sidebar and see where I am in this book. So Jerusalem in the time of David was up here, but as I scroll down, I can see what else, where else this is relative to the context. So that's just one example. Maybe I go to Rowe's Guide to End Times Prophecy, open that up there. As expected, it takes me right to where I need it to be, but it also puts it in context so I can see what's before and after it. That's the open button right there. That's probably the most important thing to know, where again, you can scroll through all of this and that may be enough, but chances are you're going to want to go more in depth. And this becomes even more true where you search something like an English word and you get maybe just a verse here, but you want to see it in context, or here maybe you see a long entry and you think, you know what, I'm just going to open this into a new zone and go down to the next resource. So accordance, again, is just trying to give you options, different ways you can view the same thing. But when I'm really kind of working with the results themselves, I am pretty quick to open it into a new zone and read it there. I can also highlight it there. I can open the content sidebar there. I can navigate this a little bit more easily. And actually what I end up doing is I will maybe find a few entries that look good and click on open. And I'm just kind of doing this at random here. But what it will do in this case is it will open them up as separate tabs, and then I can make my way through the research there. And maybe I say, okay, here are the 5 things I want, click on open, get them in a new zone, and navigate my results that way. Now you can change how this shows. At the moment, I've got it set to show full text. So when we were at this Dictionary of Jesus and the Gospels entry, it says 14 hits. Well, here's one, it's bold and it's in red. And I want to scroll to the next one, but it's taking a long time to scroll to the next one. I don't see another bold red one until here. So that's hit number 2. Well, that's because it's showing all text. So I've searched for love as an entry. It's given me the entry for love, which is long, as expected in Dictionary of Jesus and the Gospels. That is, in fact, a major theme. But it's a very long entry to scroll through. You can set that instead to show excerpts. And now you'll see that whole thing is collapsed to like one line with an ellipsis. But what that does now is it shows me the rest of my 14 entry hits from Dictionary of Jesus and the Gospels. And I've still got that open button there. So I can still open it and see the whole thing there. But what's added now is the more option. So I can just expand it here within the window. So I have a choice if this is set to show excerpts. And again, all of this personal preference, I would just recommend figure out the way you want to set it up that works best for you and leave it and know how to change it if you need to, or know that you can go back and watch this recording or go to the help files. I think show excerpts may be a little bit more efficient because when you run a search like this, you get just kind of like the bullet points, but you can always go to more to read it right here in context, and open will always be there for you as well to interact with it that way. So that's part of the gear icon that helps you as you navigate your results. We can talk about this sorting if there's interest in that in just a moment. But this is how, we've talked about searching words and the different, you want to decide the search field. So that's the different languages or image. You want to decide where to search it. Again, I'm defaulting a lot to all here, but we've talked about how you can get more granular and then flex versus exact. But then you want to be able to really navigate the results. And I think the name of the game here is knowing that you can expand and collapse these triangles, and also figuring out if you want to show excerpts or show full text. And really either way, you can still open it pretty quickly from the window. Let me pause there or stop there for a moment. I do want to get into verse searching. We've just been doing word searching, but I want to talk about verse searching, and then also want to spend some time researching from a biblical text, all of what we've done so far. And it's because I want us to really see the research window and how it works. But you may be coming to research from a Bible text more often than not. So I want to leave some time for that, but let me stop and see what questions folks have. If you've got a question too, you can take a moment and type it in. Okay, here's a comment. This is great. This is back to that question about searching multiple languages. One can search multiple languages as long as they share the same alphabet, like English and Spanish, and use the OR command. So right, so English, yeah, so that's funny. English actually means characters, that you would use in the English alphabet, but would also be used in Spanish or French or something like that. So that's right, that would work. You could search it that way. That won't span across different characters like Greek and Hebrew, but yeah, thanks for that comment. That's helpful. Somebody asks, what is the difference between ART and HIT? Yeah, let me see if I can. So ART stands for article. Let me see if I can find that again. Okay, here it is. All right, so I've got, actually, let me take a different example. No, I'll stick with this example. ART is advanced by article, HIT is advanced by HIT. So if I scroll down by HIT, it's going to scroll down where love is in the entry. If I go down by article, it's going to skip by article. Now that may be the same thing, but if you did, let me see if I can find an example here. Sort by library entry. If I were to search by English content, so here's love everywhere it occurs, not as an entry, but as a word and as an entry. All right, here's an example where that becomes more relevant. If I follow this by HIT, because I've searched not just the entries, but every word, every time love occurs, I'm just advancing by HIT, but that may keep me in the same article or paragraph. But if I go up and down by article, it follows those headings. Let me know if that doesn't make sense. But this is actually taking me up and down the entries, the articles here, whereas the HITs is going to follow the HITs. All right, what other questions or comments do folks have? Here's a question, and let me make sure I understand it. Somebody asks, how is the user group customized to restrict all to only contents of a personal library? I may need you to elaborate on personal library if you don't mind. Accordance will only search what you have in your library. And actually, I should clarify, it will only search what you have installed on that particular device. So for example, if I have purchased something from my account, but have not actually downloaded it, it won't search it because it doesn't know that I have it. So it's searching what's in your library, which is what is already installed. So that's what all will do. But within that, you can do a user group, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But let me know if I didn't answer your question. We are going to get to user groups in just a moment. All right, we'll take just another moment on questions, and then we'll. Oh, personally customized text and dictionaries. Yeah, let me come back to that when we do user groups, and feel free to ask a follow-up if I don't answer it then. Yeah, because we do actually want to spend some time on that. All right, let's talk briefly about searching verses and navigating the results. Similar concepts apply. We're just going to go to File, New tab, Research. We're going to start again here. So it may be that you want to search not a word, but a verse. And so I'll take John 3:16. And let's just search all to see what it does so we can kind of understand how this works. As expected, when it comes to the texts, all texts, and they're right here, it looked up John 3:16 in all of my texts. And if that text had a John 3:16, that means there's a hit and it's showing in my window. And I know that probably all sounds very obvious, but what this means is that it did not pull from, say, my Septuagint text, because there's not a John 3:16 in that. It needs to be a text that has the New Testament, the Gospel of John, and so it's there. So whether that's English versions or Latin or Greek, there's a John 3:16, and so it shows it to me. And so this is useful, actually. You know, maybe I just want to look at text in this case. I can just narrow it to all texts. And this is how you, one way you would compare, how do different translators give us John 3:16, including different languages besides English, and seeing it in the Greek as well. But if you search everything for John 3:16, you do get that comparison in your text, but what you also get is John 3:16 anytime it occurs as a reference in your tools. And so if you're writing a paper on John 3:16 or leading a study, or just you yourself want to understand John 3:16, the first place to go would be John 3:16 in multiple Bible texts. The next place to go would be, well, what do my commentaries and dictionaries and all the rest have to say about John 3:16? So that same one search gives you all of the above if you have it search all. So John 3:16 in the text looks a little bit differently. Now notice that if I click on open here, notice that it's given me John 3 through 16, John 3, 4 through 16, John 1 through 4. Some of those will be relevant, like God is the source of their life. Okay, that pertains. Some will not be relevant. So I've got this bibliography, quest stories in John 1 through 4. That's not really relevant. So you can make this more relevant by putting the equal sign in front of it, which is going to give you, you're telling Accordance, search exactly John 3:16, which will not change your Bible text search. That's going to stay the same, but it will change your search now for tools. So now you can see here, it's just John 3:16. So that's just a little kind of tip for searching Bible verses. And that's why I have this as a separate category here today, is that maybe you want the range, but maybe you want the specific verse. Maybe you're really going deep on a particular verse. And in that case, just to save yourself a few hits to have to navigate, put the equal sign in front of there. And then what you will see is just John 3:16 everywhere it occurs. I'm not sure why that's skipping ahead to the end of the tool. That seems like a bug. So here's John 3:16, and then if I navigate down by hit, I could scroll through here, but I can also navigate down this way. All right, let's talk about researching from an open text. So we've spent some time on the research pane, and again, I'm sure there are more things that we could have covered. So I welcome any and all questions in the chat. And if you're not sure if it's relevant, or if you're not sure it's a good question, I welcome it all the same. Please feel free to type any questions. Let's talk about how you activate this research search from an open text, because it is great that you can just open up research and do some research, but you may be in a Bible text before you decide what it is that you want to research. So let's say I'm in the NIV, and this is the last passage I had open here, and let's just take the word law. In fact, if you are available tomorrow and want to come back for more, it won't be on the research per se, but I've been leading this translation notes webinar on the Gospel of Mark, and we'll have another one at 11 Eastern tomorrow, and we're going to talk about the warning against the teachers of the law. That's why this is at this passage. It opens to my last passage that I was at. So it may be that there's a word that you want to look at in more detail, and so I don't know what that word is. Maybe it's it could just be Jesus. It could be the word law. So what you want to do is select the word. So I've double clicked to select the word law. I'm going to right click, and now I'm going to find research. It's in a little bit of a different place. But now I'm going to search law in research. Now I know that I could have gone to file, research law, and typed it in. Yes, I can do that. By the way, there's even a little keyboard or a little toolbar shortcut up here. Talk about that in a minute. But if I'm in a text, I can also just take the word, right click, go to research, and then you'll notice this whole set of groupings, that's the same as what's in the handout here. That's that same drop-down menu, the search groups, because I'm already in an English text. So that first decision of what search field you want to do, that's already made. It's an English word. That decision's already made. So really the decision now is, what do you want to search it in? And I'm going to just do everything. So English, all, and it's set to flex. Now I can change that. That's that what I call decision 2.5, if I want to make it exact. But now I've run the research search for law. It's happened from the context of the passage that I was in. So I can see now, and obviously this is going to be, there's going to be a lot of results for a word like law. So I can decide, all right, let's see how this word is used in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. Let's see what my dictionaries have to say about it. Look at this. There's an entry on law in Dictionary of Jesus and the Gospels. Surely that will be relevant. And there's a lot here, and I can make my way through that. This works similarly if you're in one of the original languages. So if I'm in Greek, for example, and I'm not assuming Greek knowledge on your part today, but here's Grammateus. I could right-click and research. My mileage may vary on that a little bit, but you could also run this search from Greek. Typically though, with a research search, I tend to do it in English just so that I can find it both in the Bible texts and in my dictionaries, commentaries, and so forth. But the idea here is you find a word or a concept. I mean, you could even do this with the word Jesus. You select it, right-click, research, and then you tell it what search groups you want to do. And again, I might just do search all, and then you interact with it in all the same ways that we did. I want to use the rest of the time. I know that was a little bit quicker, but now that we've kind of gone through the research pane, hopefully we've got a good sense of how to interact with this now. But the idea is that your starting point is different, that you're in a Bible text. You might even be in not a Bible text. You might even be in a dictionary. And so maybe I see Jesus as child. Oh, that's interesting. Let me research the word child, and same thing. Now it recycled this window because I had that set, but I can open up a new research window. So you can just, I mean, you can imagine a series of nested research searches where you just go from one text to research a term, and then you get into another tool, and then you research it out of there. And Accordance wants to be efficient so that you don't have to type, or you don't have to open up a new research window every time. You can just right-click and search from wherever you are, whether that's a Bible text or a tool. Again, maybe I'm in Temple here. I see Temple, I can research that from this. And now I've got stacked research searches, and I can make my way through that. So there's no shortage of ways that you can get into and out of your different texts and tools in Accordance. And the research function is meant to help you to do that in as efficient a way as possible. I'm going to pause there and see what questions you've got. We'll spend the rest of the time talking about this custom research group because I think that's worth knowing how to do. What questions or comments do folks have on anything we've covered so far? Let's talk about creating a custom research group. So in Accordance, if I go to, as I said, File, New tab, Research, you can see here your different user groups here. In your library, that's where you do this. So what you've got here in your search groups is following the organization of your library. And let me just advance my library to try to show this. So I'm going to collapse all these triangles so you can see. All right, so here's my library, and here are my search groups. So dictionaries, commentaries, Greek lexicons, Hebrew lexicons, these are the Accordance created ones. Remember the brackets that one user pointed out. Dictionaries, commentaries, Greek lexicons. So it is following my library here. In the same way, any user group I have in the library will show up there. And here are my groups. So I can show you the same thing. OT browser text, background commentaries, theological views, apologetics, top lexicons, so on and so forth. Let's take this theological views. Zondervan has this series, and they've got one on baptism. 3 views, 4 views, 5 views on whatever the topic is that that Christians might have different views on. And so what I've done with this group is I've taken all of the modules that I have and I've put them into a group so that I could search this whole series if I wanted to. And so the way that you do that is you go to your library, and well, there's a few ways to do that. Let me show you with this views user group how I did it. All right, so I've got here all of these different views modules, and I found them by typing in views. And it may be, you know, maybe you need to do view or views. In fact, here's Baptism 3 views. That's published by InterVarsity Press, but that's the same kind of resource, so that's great. So I have this selected. I can hold down Shift and add more, or I can just hold down Shift and up at the top. I can select all. Now I can right click these and add them to a user group. Now I've already done this, but I can add them to a new group. Let's say I don't have this already. Go to add to new group. And it did this kind of before I could really see what was happening, but it put them all together, and it gave me an untitled here, and it said basically, okay, type in your title for this. So I'm going to name this Views Resources 2024 just to differentiate. So everything I just selected is in this user group. So now I close the library, and now let's say I want to talk about the word disagreement, or let's do discussion. And maybe I'm just thinking about, okay, how do we have healthy discussions? How do we have healthy disagreements? How do we do that in a way that's, you know, founded on values or biblical principles or theology or whatever? So discussion or debate or whatever. Now when I go to all, views, resources 2024, which is what I just named it, will show up here. And so I'm not sure that anything will result here. It ought to. Yeah, here we go. Discussion and reflection questions. Look at that. So it is searched just those resources. And again, I could have just searched all, but if you want a more targeted search and don't want to navigate lots of results, maybe this is advantageous to you. In fact, now that I'm here, I might see is something like debate here. Yeah, so debate is here. So debated, I hope you will approach this book not as a debate with winners and losers, but as a dialogue. And so I might think, oh yeah, that's a good word. Let me see what they say about dialogue. And so maybe there's something, in fact, this is exactly what I was looking for, about dialogue and disagreement. This is from Views on Salvation in Pluralistic World. And this is going to talk about how this particular author thinks about dialogue and disagreement. Now, I could have easily searched my whole library for dialogue, and maybe I will after this, but and this is just an example, but if what I'm after is thinking through how do I dialogue with people with whom I disagree, a great set of resources is probably this one that's already presenting different views, because presumably they're not just presenting the views, but they're going to say something about how do we navigate these discussions. So this is a very specific example, but it's a case where that user group is useful. You can see another user group that I've got here is different Bonhoeffer resources. And I created that user group in the same way. In fact, I will just delete this as a show of good faith. Because I'm going to recreate it. So it's gone. But if I type in Bonhoeffer, any Bonhoeffer books I have show up. Shift, select, right click, add to user group, new group, Bonhoeffer. And now he's there. So when I do my research search, I can search just Bonhoeffer, and you know, I can search Bonhoeffer on Genesis 1:1. I mean, you can get very specific with these kinds of searches, and I know that he's got stuff on this in creation and fall, but here he is in ethics. Okay, there's not very much there, but I've got different hits there. So on that user groups, there's lots of different ways you can do this. I'll just stop with this. This was one user group I created for this webinar at one point, and these are not my actual top 6 resources. I think I just found ones at random, but you might even do something like top 6 resources or favorite commentaries. But notice here that this is even mixed between texts and tools, and you can do that. And so whatever user group you create, you can have it show up in research. And so maybe there are 5 tools or text or both that you're using constantly. Yes, your search all will get that in your research search, but why not also do a user group, and you can just kind of go right toward that and save yourself a little bit of time. Let me just close with this little toolbar thing, and while I do that, take a moment if you want to formulate any questions or comments. We'll wrap up with that. This is convenient too. I don't even have to open anything if my toolbar is showing. So as long as show toolbar is selected, there's a research search right there in your toolbar, and it pares it down a little bit. Actually, what it does is it kind of doubles the options. So you notice this first set here is that first decision of search fields, because it doesn't know yet. So I'm going to say English. And then that second set of modules, or the second set of categories here, is that second decision of search groups. So I'm going to go to Bonhoeffer, search in English, and I'm going to type in discipleship. And now it opens up the research window, but it did that from the toolbar. So that's kind of a neat shortcut. And again, once you get used to the research panel, it just kind of conflates those two choices. Namely, here are the search fields, and then underneath that are the search groups. So what do you want to search? Where do you want to search it? Run the search, and it pulls it up that way. All right, let's stop there with questions and comments you've got about anything we covered or anything we didn't cover. Again, my goal is to be as helpful and as thorough as possible. There are still parts of the research function that we didn't cover. So if you've got questions, I'd love to hear them. Oh, good. Somebody says this answers my former question. Thanks. Excellent. Glad to hear it. Yeah, what other questions or comments come up in the research? It's a wonderfully blank screen when you open it up this way. But again, we may be doing it from a Bible text or not a Bible text, from a dictionary text. I remember I've shared this in webinars before. I started using Accordance in 2011, I want to say, maybe 2012. And I remember on the forums, one of the very first things I read was somebody said, and I haven't been able to find this forum post since then, but it was something to the effect of, when you first get Accordance and get your resources downloaded, be prepared for a few sleepless nights. And that's because, and that could be true with a good print commentary in Bible, or just a print Bible. You know, you could stay up all night reading that. But Accordance, you know, that's true, but it also, the way that it kind of interconnects things and allows you to do just a few clicks and pull up a lot of results, makes it possible to spend a lot of time doing that. And I think the research function really proves that, because you can get at results very quickly, but there's still a lot of results. I mean, it's not like you're trying to rush your study. I think what Accordance wants you to be able to do is the kind of more mundane pieces, like opening up a module, searching a word, opening up a second module, searching a word. You don't need to do that. Maybe there's not much to be gained with that. You can search 100 modules at once. Accordance wants to give you a way to do that so that you can spend the time with the results. All right, I'm going to end the recording and then I'll stay on for just another moment. But if you are watching this on a recording afterwards, again, my email address is here, abramkj@accordancebible.com, if you want to reach out for the handout or any other questions.